Nolen Savoy's plans to take over the world turn out to be all wet. And I mean that in more ways than one. We're going to talk about it in our review of Holmes and Houdini number 3 from Zenescope Entertainment. See you in 3. And welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Holmes and Houdini number 3 from Zenescope Entertainment. This issue brings Nolen Savoy before the UN to save the world for a modest fee. But his cure may be worse than the disease. But before we get started, please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. Your attention is greatly appreciated, and make sure to stay tuned to the end for the final score. Let's talk about the credits. This issue is written by Honor Vincent, art by Oliver Borges, Alessandro Uezo, and Jagdish Kumar, colors by Fran Gamboa and J.C. Ruiz, letters by Taylor Esposito, and the main cover, cover A, is drawn by Al Barrionuevo. Previously in issue number 2, just as a recap, Holmes and Houdini were captured by Nolen Savoy, and they were subjected to his strange mind-extracting program and software called Project Grey Matter. He eventually also got both halves of the artifact that were located in the Order's headquarters in Scotland. We then find out that when you put the two halves of the artifact together, it gives the person who wields it the power and control of water in all its forms and shapes. And so now Holmes and Houdini are on the run, guided by an army of armed drones that were sent out by Nolen Savoy, and then now he has this master weapon that allows him to control all water on the planet. Now in Holmes and Houdini issue number 3, we take a brief pause to give a flashback to the original Sherlock Holmes and the original Harry Houdini and Watson, Dr. Watson, as the founders of the original, or at least the most recent incarnation of the Order prior to the current Holmes and Houdini. Sherlock Holmes has gone on innumerable cases where he finds all kinds of strange artifacts and books of power. He and Watson eventually encounter Harry Houdini through a magic show. They recognize that they have like interests, but also that they complement each other. The Order is always started by 3 individuals: a seer, a scribe, and a sage, or a mage, I should say. And that's the 3: Holmes, Watson, and Houdini, which parallels where we are in the present day. Holmes retires to a modest castle in Scotland, and he asks Houdini to join him with Watson, and then what he has in his possession, because the Order is now the keeper of all kinds of strange and powerful artifacts that could be very dangerous. One of them is a grimoire that Sherlock Holmes could never decipher. Houdini somehow has the ability to decipher the grimoire, and through the deciphering of the strange runic language, he's able to build mechanisms like the cloaking device, like holographic disguising devices based upon ancient science and ancient arcane magic. However, the 2 of them eventually have a falling out, and that's where the Order sort of went dormant for a number of years. Now we flash forward to today in the current conflict so that we get a sense of what the Order is and who's in it and what it's meant to do. As Holmes and Houdini are trying to figure out what Nolen Savoy is up to, they receive this mass broadcast over the internet where Nolen Savoy puts them on blast, saying these people are terrorists. Houdini and Holmes and Watson are terrorists, and they're trying to kill me. But I'm going to tell you why, because I have this invention that's going to help save the world, and I'm going to unveil it at a UN meeting 2 weeks from now. That gives the team time to armor up, to get to know each other a little bit better as a team, to try and figure out some devices and come up with some Mission Impossible type of the schemes to get into that UN meeting. And during the meeting, Nolen Savoy unveils that he has this artifact and he's willing to give water and water treatment to all sub-Saharan African countries that are dealing with drought and crop starvation. And he also has this ability from Project Grey Matter to get into the minds of citizens so that the leaders can know exactly what they want. And if the citizens choose not to comply, he also has this massive killer drone army that they can use to take control. All the delegates at the UN meeting think he's crazy, and he says, well, I'll show you a demonstration. So he brings water to a small African village that's been suffering from drought. Unfortunately, the device, as Watson points out earlier in the issue, is only meant for a select few people with the right mind. And then if it's wielded by the wrong person, it gets out of control. And that's exactly what happens. And unfortunately, Nolen Savoy sets off mass flooding across the planet, and everybody's freaking out. Everything's going crazy. Holmes and Watson, I should say, Holmes and Houdini take off their disguises and say, "We've got to stop this guy." All the delegates are trying to run out, but water levels are rising across the planet. And Nolan Savoy just says, "Forget it, I'm out of here, but I'm taking the artifact with me." He tells his assistant to set drones on Holmes and Houdini and kill them at whatever cost. But the assistant is having second thoughts because she's recognizing Nolan Savoy's plans are crazy, that he's crazy, and he's going to destroy everybody with his hubris and his ego. There's a big fight. Holmes and Houdini manage to chase Nolan Savoy out to a helipad where he's trying to escape, and Watson's waiting for them. Nolan Savoy strikes Watson down with this mech suit that he's wearing underneath his clothes, which sort of weirdly comes out of nowhere. And Watson is gravely injured, but Holmes and Houdini have enough time to catch up. There's a big fight, and then Nolan Savoy is captured. Watson gets up, takes the magic artifact away from him, and manages to calm the waters down because he at least has enough knowledge to know how it works. And then we engage in an epilogue where Holmes and Houdini sort of go their separate ways, but now they're given maybe inspiration or incentive to try and get back together again as a team once they figure out how to mature a little bit and to progress with their powers and their place in the world. What do we like about Holmes and Houdini number 3 from Zenescope? Lots of action, lots and lots and lots of action, big stakes. You know, when you have a magical device or an artifact that unintentionally starts flooding the world, that's a pretty big problem. So it gives you an appreciation for the size of the challenge this new team has to face and overcome. Plus, the flashback to the Order is extremely helpful. Seeing Holmes and Houdini together in a historical, not historical, but at least in a context that feels historical, even though it is fictional, is kind of a cool idea and a cool concept that might be worth exploring in the future. We'll see. And then just overall, the ending ties up all the major loose ends and gives you something to think about as far as how this team will move forward. Will they move forward as a team, or will they go their separate ways and do something else? We'll see. So generally speaking, a pretty decent ending to this 3-part miniseries. What didn't we like about Holmes and Houdini number 3? A lot happens very quickly. Some of it comes out of nowhere. So, for example, when they corner Nolan Savoy on the helipad, he rips off his suit and he's got this weird nanotech body armor suit that can spawn automatic weapons out of his shoulders and do all kinds of weird things. A lot happens very quickly that sort of comes out of nowhere. It's not even clear why he would have that mech suit in the first place, or this sort of body symbiote suit. And then Watson is on the helipad. We don't know where he came from when he was working remotely. Watson knows what the artifact is because he's able to sort of speak to it. So a lot of these pieces add up to bring the story to a close. You tie up the loose ends, but they sort of come out of nowhere. And it doesn't make a lot of sense in some cases. It just sort of feels like this, all of a sudden he has a suit that can spawn weapons. All of a sudden Watson's on the helipad, even though he was remote and had no idea where Nolan Savoy would have tried to escape or why he would have tried to escape in the first place. So things happen. They happen quickly. There's a lot of it, and some of it comes out of nowhere. So you feel kind of chaotic and rushed, if that makes sense, because pieces kind of get in the way to give you more conflict and drama, but they felt really contrived and not at all organic to where the story was headed in the first place. Let's talk about the art. So the art looks pretty good. I would say, no, actually, I would say better than good. It looks great. So normally when we see multiple artists on a particular title, in this case, you've got one pencil inker. No, I should say you have somebody who's doing both pencils and inks, an additional penciler, and 2 additional inkers. Yeah, it gets a lot, and you're like, well, the art quality probably suffers. You'll see some transition spots where it doesn't make a lot of sense, and weird inconsistencies. You don't get that here, even though the team is fairly sizable from an art perspective. They pull it together, and it feels fairly cohesive, especially when you've got a lot of art happening, and a lot of scene changes, and a lot of visual elements that are, some of which, as we noted previously, come out of nowhere. It feels like it comes together visually speaking. So great job on the art overall from the team. Final thoughts. What do we think about Holmes and Houdini number 3? This was an interesting miniseries, really well done. There's a lot of lore, a lot of world building, a lot of character building, and the core concept about a sort of mad entrepreneur, if you will, who wanted to take over the world by any means necessary, really sticks, really lands, generally speaking. The details, especially on the ending, kind of felt a little rushed and out of nowhere. And yeah, the megalomaniacal aspects of Nolen Savoy are a little bit over the top and sometimes hard to swallow, especially when you see he's flooding the world. At some point, you got to stop and think, oh, okay, maybe this isn't, I shouldn't be doing this. But generally speaking, this is a good miniseries. It's a good team up. We'd like to see more of this in the future, which is exactly the compliment that I think Zenescope would like to hear on this particular title. Therefore, we're going to give Holmes and Houdini number 3 from Zenescope a solid 8.2 out of 10. What do you think about this team up? These are relatively new characters to Zenescope's library of fantasy characters. Do you like this kind of team up where it's a little bit of magic but a little more tech and a little bit more rounded spycraft action? Does that kind of float your boat for what you're used to from Zenescope, or do you prefer the more traditional Grimm fairy tales type stuff? Let us know in the comment section. And if you like reviews just like this one, please stay tuned through the outro.